Hello, everyone. This is EJ Schultz, news editor at Ad Age, and welcome to the Marketer's Brief podcast. In this episode, we continue our monthly series examining purpose marketing hits and misses with Thomas Kolster, who is the founder and creative director at Copenhagen-based Goodvertising agency, which advises companies and organizations on how to turn environmental, societal, and health risks into market opportunities. Welcome back, Thomas. How's it going?
Thank you, EJ. Pleasure joining you. All good my side.
So we always like to start this podcast off on a positive note. So let's begin with our hits. And we're going to turn first to the Mentos brand, which has a fun ad out promoting its recyclable gum bottle. And this spot features what they're calling the Mentos Raccoon Recycling Force. And the ad goes on to show the raccoons basically out picking up these Mentos containers in their mouths, of course, and depositing them in recyclable cans. So it's a fun, loving way to promote recycling. Let's just take a quick listen and then we'll talk about it.
The Mentos paperboard gum bottle was made to be recycled. There's just one problem. Only 32% of Americans recycle. So we came up with the only logical solution. Hire an actual real animal trainer to train raccoons to recycle for you. Introducing the Mentos Raccoon Recycling Force. A group of raccoons we had specially trained just to recycle Mentos paperboard gum bottles. They're already in our trash, so this just makes perfect sense. No raccoons were harmed in the process of training. In fact, they ate a lot of expensive treats and were treated like royalty. Do not attempt. With training done, the Raccoon Recycling Force hit the streets of California. They were really out there, picking up and recycling Mentos paperboard gum bottles. I mean, wow. They don't even have opposable thumbs. This pilot program was a major success, with 75% of the raccoons recycling. It could have been 100%, Daisy. But that's still better than the only 32% of Americans. So, Mentos wants to take this nationwide. Text us where you think the raccoon should head next. The Raccoon Recycling Force. Saving the world one tiny, furry paw at a time.
So I want to remind our listeners that they could watch all these ads on adage.com, but you need to probably watch it to get a greater appreciation for it. But it's obviously a fun-loving approach to promote a more serious message. Thomas, what did you like about this one?
You know what? I would have loved to be at that little pitch meeting because just you sort of doing the lead into that made me more confusing than it actually helped. But
well, I'm no Don Draper. I apologize.
But I mean, first up, what I really love about this is, in fact, that Mentos, one of the first ones in the confectionery business who's actually gone this way with the packaging and actually created a recycling packaging. And what tends to always be what most brands does in this space is that they put up that packaging as, hey, look at that, it's the hero of the whole story. And what's so nice about this is, in fact, that they pull out a statistic that actually says, hey, wait a moment, it's actually only 32% of Americans that recycle. So they stay with this sort of like Mentos, they stay on brand. It's fun, it's quirky, it feels like Mentos. And they just get out of this doom and gloom, typical more recycling messaging stuff that we usually hear. And a second thing I love about it, they don't talk about the packaging, they talk about what we can do. They make it fun, quirky, and on brand, secondly. The third thing is they actually use behavior change mechanics in the sense that they ask us to do something, which is simple. The other thing is they play around status in the way that we don't want to be as dumb as a raccoon. So we better start recycling. So they sort of take a behavior and move it from being sort of low status to high status. So brilliant piece of work. I laughed my ass off when I saw it. And it's exactly the stuff that I want to see much more of from brands out there.
And also, don't you think it's time for raccoons to have their moment in the ad spotlight? I mean, we've had puppies forever, right? But it's time for raccoons to come out of the dark, so you might say, and really get the spotlight.
I agree. It's one of those animals that gets too much heat, and right now they have a moment to shine. Who would have known they were the guys who would save us from environmental crisis, especially now when it's the climate summit. So good on the raccoons.
All right, our next brand that we're going to give a little love to is Heinz, and it's also a little lighthearted approach. We actually wrote about this on adage.com. It was released around Halloween time, and you'll find out why in a moment. It comes from their agency, Wieden+Kennedy, New York. They tapped influencer EJ Marcus, who has something like 400,000 followers on TikTok, to play a vampire character known as Toby the Vegetarian Vampire. We won't listen to this one, but you can watch it on adage.com. But he goes on to promote the brand's tomato blood ketchup, which is sort of this seasonal fun offering that they always release around Halloween time. And the reason we're talking about on this Purpose podcast, I'll let you explain, Thomas, but it's sort of a fun, I guess, way to use vegetarians. Or why did you like this one, and why do you think that one fits in our conversation?
Again, I think it's on brand. It sort of had that sort of Heinz quirky narrative to it. And also, I mean, just from a sort of positioning point of view, I mean, for most people, Heinz is still sort of, barbecue meat. For them suddenly to go into another space and talk about, hey, wait a moment, ketchup is actually perfectly fine on Brussels sprouts, broccoli, or whatever make vegetarians happy. And I think they do it tongue in cheek. I think if they had taken this topic too serious, I think it would have backfired on them. And I think in this approach, I actually just absolutely love them for embracing a group of people. I mean, I've been a vegetarian full on. I've been a vegan. I've been a flexitarian, and by doing it, it's quite a lovely way of involving all of us.
And of course, the link to sustainability there, right, is we've talked about sort of other brands on recent podcasts talking about, obviously the production of meat products, if not done the right way, can be an environmental problem. And so, I mean, not that this ad is jumping into that, but subtly, as you're suggesting, Heinz might need to eventually find a way to talk more about how this product can be used on non-meat-based products. So this might be one way in for them going forward. Do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's a clever way of also sort of shifting the focus away from maybe just talking about themselves to actually engaging ordinary folks in a more plant-based diet. I mean, if we look at Hellmann's mayonnaise and some of the stuff they've done around food waste, is obviously also focusing on how that brand can play a role in that shift. So I think it's a clever strategy also because it makes sense from a product point of view. If Heinz was only branded and the only thing that you think of is barbecue and meat, you got an issue in the long term. So clever, relevant, on brand, and again, what I love about it, as we saw with the Mentos one, we're seeing way more creativity right now to apply to this category, which for me is really reassuring. It shows there's more competition to get attention, but it also really shows that finally agencies and brands are really stepping up and getting this right.
And it means a lot to hear you say that, Thomas, because I know you don't pull any punches. So this is so far a very positive podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we have one more hit to talk about that is very topical. We're days away from the World Cup starting, and I know you and I and lots of people have been curious to see how brands might play in the space, considering the host country, Qatar, has had a lot of issues, a lot of criticism, activist group talking about their poor human rights record, laws against homosexuality, accusations of migrant labor issues. And we have the brand we're going to talk about that's sort of leaning into that. It's BrewDog, which is known for this very attention-grabbing marketing, craft beer brand in the UK. And they sort of take their own dig at the World Cup by positioning itself as the, quote, anti-sponsor of the World Effing Cup. And their BrewDog is backing up this effort by pledging to donate 100% of the profits from every beer sold of their Lost Lager brand during the tournament to registered charities that directly help those who have been affected by human rights injustices in Qatar. So, Thomas, what did you like about this effort?
I mean, first up, I think on everybody's mind, from other brands to people out there, obviously the whole human rights agenda and all those concerns that's happening around Qatar. And I just love how they insert themselves so cleverly into one of the most expensive sponsorships. It's almost they're the little David that's pushing sort of Goliath and the Abe InBev and all those folks and say, you can take your $100 million of sponsorship, and we're playing with it creatively. Our little David's sling is just really simple, creative copywriting, and this idea about sort of being the anti-sponsor. So I love this type of sort of takeover advertising, and I love also how they get to truly position themselves on values. And by doing so, it's almost like they're saying, hey, you are the folks in the beer category. Are you really genuine? Are you really authentic? So I think there's a lot of kudos to BrewDog for daring to do this and doing it in such a clever way. They just take over the whole conversation.
Of course, we'll have to leave it up to the trademark lawyers to debate whether or not World Effing Cup is close enough to World Cup where they might not, where they might get some complaints from the lawyers over trying to use the trademark. Moving on to the misses, let's begin with Procter & Gamble, which has been known for years now as doing a lot of purpose-based marketing, a lot of emotional marketing, plugging into causes, a lot of it really well done. This effort, one of their newer efforts, is for their Crest and Oral-B brands. They have a campaign out aimed at closing what they call is America's Smile Gap. And it's basically a goal to eliminate disparities in dental health by the year 2030 by providing help to 20 million people. And the effort calls attention to the fact that Black and Hispanic children are 2 to 4 times more likely to have cavities and other dental problems. The way that P&G promotes this in their marketing is with some ads showing children in these demographics basically trying to brush their teeth with their fingers with the assumption that they can't afford good dental care. Obviously a worthy cause. No one's questioning that, but I think you maybe have an issue with this approach. Thomas, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, and I think especially in context to some of the other stuff we've seen, I mean, no doubt about it, it's short, it's effective, it got a simple ask. So I think on those parameters, they do it right. But it almost just seems too much out of the sort of Dove playbook. Let's find a statistic, but it's like they don't really creatively get that into a space where it sort of emotionally connects with me. So it just seems too easy. So yeah, they wanna try and kind of bridge the smile gap, but I think the real beef with this for me is in fact the creativity gap. I don't think they bring enough interesting, compelling storytelling to the table. And as you say, the course is worthy. There's so many emotions in this course. It just sort of lands a little bit flat for me, to be honest. And then the second thing that we talked a lot about today is in fact the brand recognition, the role of the brand in all of this. And my issue is also, will you really remember this as a Crest Oral-B type thing? Or will people think about Colgate or some of the other brands out there that has been quite active in this space for a long number of years? So I think it fails on a couple of those issues.
Okay, moving on to our final miss of this podcast. It comes from the banking sector. HSBC has been called out by the Advertising Standards Authority in the UK. This is a governing body that's pretty aggressive. And as reported by the Drum magazine recently, they're fielding complaints over some poster type advertising that HSBC has done that includes language such as, quote, climate change doesn't do borders, neither do rising sea levels. That is why HSBC is aiming to provide up to 1 trillion, I think, a big number of a high amount of dollars.
I think you're right. It is a trillion. I think it is a trillion.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I saw that. I was like, wow, that seems way high. In financing investment globally to help our clients transition to net zero. So the complaints that ASA received about this are that they're misleading because they omit the significant information about HSBC's contribution to carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions. So classic case of not walking the walk, perhaps. Thomas, what's your take on this?
No, exactly. I think we covered that in some of the earlier episodes, this idea about how you substantiate your claim. And also if you actually do this proportionate claims, it's kind of like if, back when I was a teenager and I hosted a party at my parents' house and I got caught and I'd be saying to my mom, hey, mom, but at least I took out the garbage. It's sort of like trying to, bring the attention away from the real issue is in fact, they have tons of fossil fuel clients, which is a major issue. It is one of the banks that actually haven't really divested from a lot of those sort of fossil fuel heavy industries. And yet they do a poster campaign where they sort of say, hey, look at all the stuff we're doing. I mean, for me, it reminds me a lot of the stuff we saw years ago from a lot of car companies where they talked about the tree planting and similar initiatives. And why I really wanted to, have this as a miss is also just that a lot of things is changing in advertising right now, and some of the things we got away with earlier, if it's not a advertising sort of watchdog that is scrutinizing a lot of this stuff, for sure people will call this out and they will not be happy. And we've seen groups like brand vandalism that's also taken over billboards and sort of created mock advertising, making fun of everything from banks to airlines with some of these messages. So I think it's a real wake-up call that also shows why it's so difficult to navigate in this space right now. But I think always make it, substantiate your claim and don't try and, pull away from the real facts and the real stuff you're doing. So back to walking the walk, as you say.
Okay, that's a great spot to leave it today. Thomas, I want to thank you again for your time.
It was good fun, and for once I was really optimistic today, right?
Yeah, we only had 2 misses today, so tune back a month from now. I'm sure we'll get back to our quota of having at least 3
I'll
misses.
be grumpy, I promise.
Okay.
I promise. Next time I'll be grumpy.
That was Thomas Kolster, the founder and creative director of Copenhagen-based Goodvertising agency. My name is EJ Schultz, news editor at Ad Age. I want to thank our producer, Lauren Chiardio, and invite everyone to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite channel. You can catch more details about everything we talked about today on adage.com. We will catch everyone next time. See you later.